Glenn Hartford slammed the folder down so hard the damn conference table rattled. "I want every one of you to look at this," he barked, jabbing a thick finger toward the open file. $2.6 million disappeared from our books, and every single trail leads back to him. Then he pointed, right at me. "My name's Daniel Reeve. I'm 45 years old. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I've worked at Helix Core Technologies for almost 13 years. This morning, I thought I was walking into a quarterly roadmap review. What I got was a firing squad. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from?" 12 people sat around that glass-walled room. Directors, senior devs, compliance reps. People I'd worked alongside for years. None of them looked at me now. Glenn turned the folder around and shoved it toward the center. Access logs, credential audits, change approvals, all trace back to Reeve, all during the time he rebuilt the compliance infrastructure and moved on to the tech task force. "Fancy title, huh, Dan? How long were you planning this?" I couldn't speak yet. I just looked at the mess of screenshots, printed logs, file paths. It was all real, but it wasn't the whole story. That's when it hit me. This wasn't discovery. This was a setup. Glenn wasn't asking questions. He already had answers. His answers. And this whole performance, it wasn't about truth. It was about optics. "This fraud nearly triggered an SEC audit," he went on, pacing. "You think we wouldn't catch it? You think you're smarter than this company?" I clenched my jaw. I'd spent the last 6 months re-engineering our financial compliance platform. Every login, every update, every access key, I'd lived inside that code. And now it was being used to burn me alive. "You planted this," I said quietly. Glenn smirked. "Excuse me?" I reached into my backpack, pulled out a small USB drive, and held it up. "You should probably see this before you finish your little speech." He laughed, loud and mocking. "What is that, Dan? Your resignation video?" I didn't answer. I walked over to the conference display and plugged it in. Clicked the folder, played the file labeled Hartford Meeting, December 14th, 2024. The room fell silent. Glenn's voice came on, clear as day. "Look, just bypass the second-level validation for now. I'll approve it verbally. We can patch the trail later." You could hear me too, hesitating. "That'll trip audit flags." "I said I'll take care of it," Glenn's voice snapped. "Just make it disappear." No one said a word. I didn't move. I let it play another 30 seconds, then stopped it. "You want to keep going?" I said, looking right at him. Glenn didn't laugh this time. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, frozen, while the walls around him finally started to crack. I clicked into the folder. "That wasn't the only recording," I said. Glenn didn't move. No one did. I showed them more clips, different dates, same instructions. Glenn authorizing bypass after bypass, always off the record. Nobody made a sound. Even the AC felt louder than the room. I clicked the audio off and turned back to them. I didn't start recording Glenn because I didn't trust him. I did it because the system started throwing flags and no one was asking why. So I started keeping logs. Video, audio, credentials, timestamps. Anything that didn't line up, I opened another folder. This is every version of the transaction files Glenn is accusing me of altering. Original files, Glenn's approvals, metadata logs before and after edits. Nothing was done without his sign-off, or his direct access. I clicked into one file tree, showing the same file with a dozen versions, all saved within seconds of each other. These edits didn't come from my account. They came from his admin key, his machine. Glenn finally spoke. "You manipulated this." His voice was quieter now, not shouting, just trying to stay on his feet. I shook my head. I didn't manipulate anything. I made backups. I kept receipts. No one moved. Then Morgan, one of the senior devs who once tanked my performance review over a missed deadline, shifted in his seat and cleared his throat. "We should probably stay," he muttered, not looking at anyone. Glenn's phone buzzed. He picked it up, turned away from the table, and answered in a hushed voice. His hand started shaking halfway through. He didn't turn back around. Then he hung up, looked right at me, and said, "This meeting's over." I didn't sit down. I didn't blink. "No, it's not," I said, "because I already sent everything to the authorities this morning." Before I walked in, that landed like a bomb. Two people pushed back from the table. Another leaned forward and said, "Sent what?" "All of it," I said. "The audit trails. The logs, the audio, the video. Every change that went through the system under Glenn's authorization. I sent it to the SEC, our external audit firm, and the local FBI field office. Glenn just stood there, pale, silent, that smug swagger, gone. I looked around at the rest of them. Some couldn't meet my eyes. A few nodded slowly, like the weight of what was happening had finally sunk in. "You promoted me to that task force to isolate me," I said, turning back to Glenn. "You gave me full back-end access because you needed someone to push things through without oversight. You thought I'd be too grateful or too stupid to push back. But I saw the flags. I followed the trail. And I wasn't about to take the fall for you." Glenn opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked down at the USB still plugged into the screen, then walked toward the door without another word. No denial, no fight, just retreat. The door clicked shut behind him. I turned back to the group. "There's a full copy of everything in your inbox," I said. "Subject line, for the record." Morgan nodded, still quiet. Nobody left. Nobody said a thing. They just sat there, finally seeing what I'd been living with for months and realizing they'd backed the wrong guy. About 5 minutes after Glenn disappeared, IT showed up. Two guys in blue Helix Core polos, stone-faced, walked straight to my desk without saying a word. I didn't stop them. They disconnected my monitors, pulled my badge access, wiped my credentials from the system right there in front of me. Just like that, I was a ghost in my own building. One of them finally muttered, "Just following orders." "Yeah," I said, "a lot of that going around." They left. Then security started pacing the halls. One of them hovered near the door to the executive wing, where Glenn had locked himself in. The tension was so thick you could chew it. I sat at my desk, alone. The conference room was still full of people pretending to look busy, nobody daring to leave yet. Phones were ringing. Slack was going off like a fire alarm, but nobody was saying a damn thing. 40 minutes later, they came in. Two guys in suits. One had a badge clipped to his belt. The other carried a black laptop bag. "Daniel Reeve?" the first one asked. I stood. "That's me. We understand you have files relevant to an internal fraud investigation. May we sit?" I led them to the small war room behind the main floor. They didn't waste time. "We need access to everything you've compiled," the older one said. "Raw files, logs, metadata, full copies. Can you provide that?" I opened my backpack, pulled out a drive, and handed it over. "Everything's on there. Here's a full copy for you." The younger agent flipped open his laptop and plugged it in. "This goes deeper than we thought," he muttered as the folders loaded. "This fraud likely crossed state lines. Wire fraud, falsified filings, possible conspiracy." The older one looked at me. "You're aware of the risks you took by coming forward?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm also aware of what happens when people don't." They nodded, thanked me, and left with the drive. Just like that, it was out of my hands. I should have felt proud, vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. In the days that followed, everything fell apart. 3 board members resigned. Legal launched a full internal review. Glenn vanished. No email, no press release, nothing. His office stayed locked. The rest of us, we got benched. They called it paid administrative leave, but it felt more like house arrest. I sat in my apartment day after day waiting for the other shoe to drop. TV on mute. Phone silent, email dead. And the last thing Glenn ever said to me kept circling like a vulture. "Nobody hires the guy who rats out the boss." At first, I brushed it off, but after a couple of weeks of silence, it started to sink in. He might have been right. I wasn't a hero. I was a liability, a whistleblower. A name attached to a scandal worth millions. The kind of name that makes recruiters close a file and move on. I stopped checking my inbox, stopped taking calls. I didn't want updates, I wanted distance. I hadn't left the apartment in 6 days when my phone finally rang. I didn't recognize the number, almost didn't answer, but I did. "Dan," a woman's voice said. "It's Vanessa. You got a minute?" Vanessa Alden, Senior Vice President of Compliance. The only exec who'd ever treated me like my work actually mattered. She hadn't said a word to me in weeks. I figured she'd jumped ship like the rest. "I'm here," I said. She took a breath. "The board wants to meet with you. Not for damage control. They want to talk about rebuilding, and they want you involved." I didn't say anything yet. I just listened, because for the first time in weeks, someone was actually calling me. "I'm listening," I said, still gripping the phone tighter than I needed to. Vanessa didn't waste time. "The board wants to meet, in person. They're not looking to fire you. They want your help rebuilding." I sat back, staring at the dead TV screen. "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who didn't lie, fold, or run. Because your name's clean and the company's not. And frankly, because they don't have a better option." We met the next morning, same building, same floor, but a different vibe. I walked past security with no badge, just a visitor sticker slapped on my chest, like I was someone's +1 at a wedding. The boardroom felt colder than usual. Maybe it was just me. 8 people sat waiting, some I recognized from stockholder calls and project reviews, others I'd only seen in passing, all of them looking at me now like I was some new kind of animal. Vanessa was already seated, calm as ever. She gave me a small nod. I didn't nod back. One of the men, silver hair, pinstripe suit, cleared his throat. "Mr. Reeve, thank you for coming in. I didn't sit until they asked. We've reviewed the findings. The board has voted to offer you a new position. Director of Systems Integrity," he continued. "Full control over compliance tech, reporting directly to the board. You'll build the team. You'll set the policies, 6-figure increase, bonus incentives, stock options." I waited, no one spoke. They were expecting a thank you. Instead, I leaned forward. "I've got conditions." A few shifted uncomfortably. "First, my team, the tech compliance group you sidelined last quarter, they get full exoneration, public and documented. I want bonuses issued for all of them, retroactive to last quarter." The man nodded slowly. "That's reasonable. Second, I want full audit access. Every system, every team, every exec account, including yours. No exemptions." Pause. "We'll discuss scope." "No," I said. "That's not a discussion. That's the deal." "Third," I said, "I want Glenn's office." That one got a reaction. A few eyebrows raised. One woman muttered something under her breath. Vanessa cut in. "That's symbolic." "He wants to be seen." "Damn right," I said. "You're asking me to clean up a mess he created. You want this company to survive? Start showing people it's under new leadership." They didn't like it, but they agreed. Then came the last ask. "No NDA," I said. "I'm not signing a gag order." Pinstripe leaned forward. "Daniel, this is sensitive. There are liabilities. I'm not asking for a megaphone. I'm saying I won't be your scapegoat if this goes sideways again. If you want me to help fix this place, I need to be able to tell the truth." Period. Another long pause. Then Vanessa looked at the rest of them and said, "Put it in writing." 20 minutes later, I walked out of that boardroom with everything I asked for in a thick folder, initials on every page. They'd given me power, but more importantly, they gave me leverage. No badge yet, no new desk. But I knew exactly where I was going, straight into Glenn's old office, and this time, I wasn't walking in to take the blame. The first thing I did was take the nameplate off Glenn's door and toss it in the trash. Then I got to work. I wasn't hiring friends. I wasn't hiring people who smiled in meetings and sold you out. The second things got rough. I went back through every log, every Slack thread, every team note from the blow-up. I made a list of who kept their heads down, who didn't pile on, and who spoke up. even if no one listened. Reggie was the first call, a 30-year vet, sysadmin from the East Data Ops wing, quiet guy, smart, unshakable. He was the one who'd pulled me aside last year and said, "You ever need a second set of eyes? I got you." Back then, I thought he was just being polite. He wasn't. When I offered him second in command, he said, "Thought you'd never ask." Next was Jorge, finance guy, sharp as hell. He was the one who flagged those audit inconsistencies before anyone else, and they buried him in vendor tracking to shut him up. I found him in a temporary cube with no window and no team. I asked him if he wanted to build the safeguards with me. He didn't even blink. "When do we start?" Last was Trent, fresh out of college, quiet coder. Didn't have a mentor, didn't have a crew, but I remembered how he sent me a DM during the worst of it and said, "I don't believe a word they're saying about you." That stuck. I told him he was in. He said, "Seriously?" Like he thought it was a prank. I handed him a key card. "Welcome to the deep end." Morgan tried to get back in. He emailed, called, even showed up outside my office once, trying to play the "we were all under pressure" angle. I didn't open the door. If you roll over once, you'll do it again. I kept the team tight. We built from scratch. New systems, new checks, no shortcuts. Every change required dual approvals. Every log had a timestamp and a watcher. We installed automated alerts for tampering attempts. And I made it mandatory that every system had a rollback path with snapshots hourly. We called them the Reeve Safeguards. At first, people hated them. Too rigid, too slow, too many damn alerts. But within 2 months, they caught 3 real-time issues before they escalated. That shut everybody up. Some execs still avoided eye contact when they passed me in the halls. A few treated me like a compliance boogeyman, like I was going to audit their lunch receipts. But others started dropping by, asking for insight, forwarding issues they used to ignore. The system started working. We started breathing again. It wasn't easy. The workload was brutal. We were understaffed and overwhelmed, and I barely slept more than 5 hours a night. I still jumped every time a call came in after hours, thinking maybe this was the day it all collapsed again. But it didn't. Every week we didn't implode, I considered a win. And the people beside me, they weren't just names on a roster. They were the reason we were still standing. We were building something worth trusting, and this time, no one was walking in the front door to burn it down. It was a Tuesday night, late. I was still at my desk, cleaning up a rollback from a failed audit tool deployment. Reggie had gone home. The office was dead quiet. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number, 1 line of text. "You think you've won? Enjoy it while it lasts." I just stared at it. Didn't need a signature. I knew exactly who it was from. Glenn always thought he was smarter than everybody. Even on the way down, he couldn't help running his mouth. I screenshotted the message and sent it straight to legal. Didn't hesitate. I wasn't playing games. Next morning, I walked into the building and every face turned to me before I even said a word. Vanessa met me at the door to my office. "You see it yet?" she asked, holding her phone. I shook my head. She handed it over. Headline: Former Helix Corps CEO Glenn Hartford arrested in Florida hotel. Federal charges pending. The article said he'd been under investigation in 3 states. Wire fraud, conspiracy, falsifying SEC filings, obstruction. Apparently, I wasn't the first person he tried to hang out to dry. Just the first one who didn't fold. I exhaled, but it didn't feel like relief. Not really. More like a pause in pressure. Glenn was finally off the board, but I knew better than to assume that meant the game was over. Vanessa sat down across from me and said, "You're going to need to testify." I leaned back. "Of course I am." "It's not optional," she added. "Federal case. They want the internal narrative to match the evidence when. They'll brief you next week." I didn't argue. I didn't ask what it meant for my job or my title. I already knew what mattered now. The board wanted Glenn gone, but more than that, they wanted their name clean. And I was the only one who could explain exactly how it happened. Later that day, I got an email from internal counsel. They were putting resources behind the case. travel costs, prep support, protection if needed. Their message was clear: don't flinch, we've got you. Still, when I walked into the server room that evening, just to breathe and let the fan noise drown out my head, I couldn't shake the feeling. Glenn didn't come at you once. He came back. He circled. He waited. And if the government didn't bury him deep enough this time, I knew damn well he'd try again. But I also knew something else. This time, I wasn't the one exposed. This time, he'd be the one sitting under lights, with no backups, no cronies, no exit. Just a whole room full of facts and a guy like me with the receipts. The federal courthouse smelled like old wood and nerves. I walked in wearing a plain gray suit, nothing flashy, folder in hand. Inside it, printouts, annotated logs, screen captures. The same receipts that kept me up at night, now neatly tabbed and ready for court. Glenn was already seated at the defense table, cuffed, thinner than I remembered, jaw tight, hair grayer, meaner. He didn't look at me when I walked past. I didn't expect him to. They called me to the stand right before lunch. The clerk swore me in. I sat down, adjusted the mic, and opened the folder. The prosecutor started with the basics: my name, position, years at Helix Corps. Then we got to the real stuff. I walked them through the timeline, how I'd been promoted, given expanded access, verbally directed to override safeguards. I pointed out exact timestamps where Glenn's account made unauthorized edits. I showed where logs had been deleted, then how I recovered them from backup copies he didn't know I kept. I explained the recordings, the audit flags, the structure of the financial compliance system I built from the ground up. No embellishments, just data. Then it was the defense's turn. Glenn's lawyer, a guy in an expensive Navy suit with a practiced smirk, stood and started flipping pages like he'd just uncovered the truth of the universe. "Mr. Reeve," he said, "you were promoted right before these edits began?" "Yes." "And you had administrative access, others did not?" "Correct." "And you recorded your own boss without his consent?" I leaned forward. Arizona is a one-party consent state. I was that party. He looked mildly annoyed, then smiled at the jury like he was setting up the punchline. "Wouldn't it be fair to say you had motive? The promotion, the access, the authority, all handed to you right before the fraud?" I kept my voice steady. "I didn't ask for the promotion. I didn't ask for the access. I didn't ask for any of it. You accepted it. Because it was my job. What I didn't accept was becoming the fall guy." He paused. "Isn't it convenient that you come out clean while your boss takes the blame?" I stared at him. "No, it's not convenient. It's miserable. You think I wanted this circus? I had a team. I had a job I gave a damn about. I'm here because someone tried to bury me, and I refuse to stay buried." He blinked. The judge didn't move, didn't scold me, didn't object to the tone, just nodded once and told him to move on. I stayed on the stand another 20 minutes, answering questions, walking the court through folder after folder. Every step led back to Glenn. The jury watched me differently than they had when I walked in. Like maybe I wasn't just another tech guy with receipts. Like maybe I had a spine. When it was over, I stepped down. Glenn still didn't look at me. Outside, the reporters were waiting. Dozens of them, lined up along the sidewalk. "Mr. Reeve, is it true you brought the evidence directly to the FBI? Did the company know what Glenn was doing? Do you feel vindicated?" I didn't say a word. I kept walking, past the noise, past the flashing cameras, past the microphones shoved at my chest. This wasn't about revenge. It was about surviving and keeping the truth from getting buried under someone else's lies. A year to the day since I walked into that ambush, I stood in front of my team in the new compliance wing. We just hit our audit goals for the first time since the scandal. Clean. Every line, every log, nothing missed. The room was quiet for a second, after the report finished uploading. Then Reggie clapped once and said, "That's it. We're locked." I looked around the room. Same core crew. Jorge at the monitor. Trent scribbling notes on his tablet. A few new faces mixed in, eyes sharp, not jaded yet. You didn't have to stay, I told them. You could have walked out any time. Jorge smirked. Nah, we were waiting to see if you'd crack. Reggie leaned back in his chair. We stayed because we trusted you. Simple as that, I nodded. Didn't say much else. I wasn't great with speeches, and they didn't need one. The Reeve safeguards had turned into more than just internal policy. We'd started licensing them to external clients, government contractors, Fortune 500s, even a few banks. They wanted our systems because they knew what we'd been through and what we'd built after. Last month, the board made it official. I was now Chief Risk Officer, full control over compliance, tech, and oversight, all the parts that mattered. No fluff. I didn't throw a party, didn't change my routine, still came in early, still left late, still triple-checked the logs on weekends. This morning, I found a plain white envelope on my desk. No return address, no stamp, just tucked under my monitor. Inside was a newspaper clipping from last week, my promotion announcement circled in red ink, and below it, one line in crooked handwriting. You won. I stared at it for a second. No signature, no doubt who sent it. I didn't smile, didn't flinch. I stood up, walked to the shredder, and fed it through. Gone in 3 seconds. No response, no fear. Just a quiet nod to a fight I never wanted, but one I finished on my own terms.